Awesome. So thanks for sticking around, everyone. So my name's Mike. I work for Accenture, and this is my colleague Rob. He's going to be joining me for the demo today. And we're going to talk a bit about how we've automated around Jenkins and kind of scaled up. So obviously, being a consulting company, we have to deal with a number of different projects, a number of different technologies, a number of different team sizes. You've got some teams that are kind of pizza-sized teams. You've got some projects that are more kind of waterfall projects. So how do we kind of get around the problem of putting automation and DevOps with it? So hooray, Jenkins, that's why we're here. But wait, it's not just Jenkins that we need to focus on. So we created this thing called ADOP, which is the Accenture DevOps platform, a little while back. Jenkins sits at the core of it and kind of helps automate everything around it. But the kind of key point is that we also need some of the best practice DevOps tools, such as version control. We've got Selenium, automated testing. We've got SonarQube, code quality. We've got Artifact Store, Nexus, and we've got Sensu, which is monitoring too. So I'm going to start on a little journey. You've got Jenkins in the DeLorean. Let's just appreciate that for a minute. Essentially, we started off in about 2012, where we had lots of different projects with lots of different tools. So we actually had our own kind of in-house Jenkins, which was called Moose back in the day. And all these projects use different tools. So in terms of reuse and alignment, there wasn't much we could do because we felt that there was actually loads of different tools. So then we kind of came up with a golden standard. So back at this time, we were still setting it up in different ways. People were still setting up their own tool sets in their own ways. We even had a kind of Jenkins best plugins list, which was like a weekly call at the time. And one of the projects actually grew so much that it became like a shared instance, and it meant that other mini Accenture projects could come along and take a kind of slice of the pie and kind of reuse that if they didn't want to worry about the full tool setup in itself. We then moved to kind of a chef model, so we had loads of cookbooks that kind of set up our tools. We found that in actual fact, it was kind of hard to keep aligning them back, and that people would make small changes specifically for their project, and then actually kind of there was a bit more overhead transferring and sharing them all around. So we actually moved more towards a Docker approach. So we Dockerized our kind of platform, which is ADOP, and moved towards the fact that we could push that out immutably. If someone needed to update something, we'd update it the core version and push that out as well. So this was really the foundation for what we call ADOP in itself. Additionally, one thing to notice, as the kind of technology moved on for us to kind of start smaller projects and roll them out, the technology moved along in the shared instance as well. So part of ADOP is this thing called platform management. Best name of it is Platman. I'll let you get the na-na-na. And essentially, it was this kind of automation on top of ADOP itself. So this is a kind of example of what platform management does in itself. So we had loads of projects that were kind of building around core technology. So like examples there, we had Java projects, we had React projects, Chef, we had SAP, we had Hybris, we had AEM, lots of different projects. And we found that we were actually going into projects and creating like pipelines and automation across all those different projects and doing it in a different way, similar way, and we wanted to kind of align our best practices. So we created this thing called Cartridges, which I'll go on to very momentarily. And essentially, our platform management sits on top of Jenkins and would reload some automation from a previous kind of store, generate a load of pipelines, and maybe some example repositories from it. So if I wanted to delve in a bit more what a cartridge is, think of my old handy SNES. The SNES is like ADOP, and it's kind of powered by Jenkins in its own sense. So if I had a Java cartridge, as an example, what comes with it out of the box is it comes with some example source code. So it could not just be like one repository, it could be multiple repositories. It's also got some application CI/CD. So we started off with the core cartridge element being DSL, and also some infrastructure automation too. So whichever way is the best way to run Java in this case, whether it's or something like Hybris, the idea is that we'd put some example infrastructure automation in it too. Cool. So I'm going to hand over to Rob, who's just going to give a quick demo.
Awesome. Thanks,
of
Mike.
how the kind of cartridges work.
let me just open up sample cartridge. So I'm going to show you our skeleton cartridge, which is on our Accenture GitHub. And a cartridge contains core things. It's got jobs, and you've got different types of jobs. So previously we used to store job configuration in XML. You upgrade a plugin, the XML changes, it's very verbose, not very easy to maintain. So cartridge also support that. We've also quite heavily into DSL, so using the job DSL plugin, which uses Groovy. And with Groovy and the job DSL plugin, we can programmatically create Jenkins jobs according to a set of configuration. So this is a very simple example cartridge that we have, called a skeleton cartridge. It just says, hey, I want to pull Git from this Git repo, template, verbalized. I want a new pipeline view. I want a build app job with some parameters. So it's very easy to maintain. It's in version control. And this cartridge can be well, Project 2 is also using your technology. I can give them that cartridge, and they can use it, PR it, submit feedback back. Cool. So if I give you an example, so if I go to my Jenkins, so as I said, as Mike said, when you go to the core of Jenkins, you have Platman. Platman gives us the ability for a new project to generate their new project. So they'll want a new project. So let's call this one demo. And what that will do is that will then generate a new folder for the team to work in. And in this folder, there's a load cartridge job, which lets you load these cartridges. Cool. So once that's done, very quick, I can start loading in cartridge management. Say, go to my load cartridge job, and go, hey, well, what's actually available? So it's pre-populated with some of the open source cartridges that we have available. So you go, well, what's a reference for deploying Java applications, say Spring? I can go, let's load that. Choose my SCM provider. Not everyone wants to use Gerrit, and this is one of our learnings. Some people may want to use Bitbucket, GitHub, or another SCM provider. So in the job DSL, it can infer what SCM provider you're using and put repositories in the appropriate place. So let's call this Java Service. And what that will do is it will put it in a folder called Java Service within my existing project. So it goes off, loads it using the job DSL plugin, works out your SCM provider, etc. Cool. So if I go to an example one, so it's working away in the background, you'll see that it's created all my pipelines for me programmatically. And I can give that cartridge to someone else, and they can go and do that. And they can load it X number of times. You've got 10 services. You can run it 10 times with different names. Cool. Thanks.
Awesome. Run from previous slide. No worries. Perfect. Cool. So obviously that was a DSL-based cartridge, but I'll stand over here for the cameras. But one of the things is, obviously, since we did the DSL practice and it kind of moved on, obviously Jenkins files came along too. So we still keep this core mechanism in place of cartridges. One of the great things is this cartridge store could, have like a microservice-based kind of architecture, like application reference. So we still want to keep the kind of same core on it. So if I was to load it DSL style, all I'd do is grab the cartridge, Platman and load cartridge would load it in, generate the pipelines, and generate some repos with the example architecture in there too. Pretty much the same with the Jenkins file too. So you still load the example cartridge, but this time it kind of generates all of the repositories first, and then just sets up the reference job to reference the Jenkins files in the repositories too. Cool. So now we have this kind of cartridge mechanism. We found that actually we're ready to scale across all of our different projects. So if projects are using ADOP, then that means they could just inject their cartridges in. We've got an aligned way of getting different jobs across. We even get to the fact that actually projects might have really specific jobs. So we do, as I mentioned, we have some kind of waterfall projects that could have like hundreds and hundreds of jobs because they're not releasing in a very, very quick way. So in actual fact, some projects might take the cartridge on and kind of adapt it to themselves by just making their jobs in an immutable, recreatable way. The other thing that we did, which we thought was quite cool, is that if rather than just taking ADOP and having to have ADOP, we also came up with the capability that you could inject the core load cartridge and platform management into any Jenkins too. So remember that shared instance thing I talked about earlier? So we also grew our ADOP internal instance too, and this kind of grew from a small project, got larger, it scaled out more, and we actually ended up taking the kind of enterprise version of Jenkins. We took CloudBees on, we changed our Sonar to be enterprise, we actually switched in the Atlassian tools, so it wasn't just around these kind of core dev tools ready to go, it had some kind of enterprise grade products on there too. So one of the things that Rob briefly mentioned in his kind of cartridge demo was the fact that the SCM provider thing. And this is something that we thought was a really great idea, is that we still wanted the cartridges to work in our community version of ADOP with Gerrit, but also our enterprise version of ADOP with Bitbucket too. So it means we still load the same cartridge no matter what the tool change with it too. And Jenkins helps us power that. So just some further challenges that we got once we had this kind of established process was that how do I find all these cartridges? It's great from an open source perspective, we've got that drop down, but we have a lot of internal enterprise cartridges that are kind of really beneficial just for us to keep internally. Also, we have quite a classic statement, is that I need a Jenkins yesterday from our kind of internal instance too. So our minds kind of started to wander towards a kind of self-service DevOps capability model. So now we're going to just really quickly show off our self-service portal and our kind of cartridges catalog and what this mechanism eventually turned into.
Cool. So let me slow it. So we built a SaaS, which is our ADOP self-service portal. And on this portal, if you're a new project, say building a new service, you come here, you walk through our dynamic wizard, fill out some details, and go, oh, hey, I want these tools. And it goes off, creates all that for you. Creates your Sonar Queue projects, creates your Confidence Space, your Jira project, sorts out all your permissions. And this is the one-stop shop. So it sits on top of the ADOP platform. And that does all the orchestration, all the automation. And in that, we've got our catalog. So people can easily find what's available on our platform, different bundles, which I won't go into, what services do we offer, and most importantly, the cartridges that we have. Cool, so you can see some of the cartridges that we offer. So you've got that one-stop shop to see where do we go. Cool. Cool, and one great thing about this, I can go to a project. So we developed this SaaS platform, or the ADOP portal, using the ADOP tooling. So we built it on the platform, which is quite cool. And once you've got a new project, so ADOP portal as an example, you've got a dashboard. So this kind of gives you that one unified experience across all of the ADOP platform. So Jenkins just not just on its own, you've got Sonar Queue it relies on for code quality. This gives you the links to those projects. And you can see your services, you can request new services. And then we've got this thing called components. So we spoke about cartridges, but once you go, well, I want a cartridge configured to my ADOP, to my project. I've got a different Sonar, I want to deploy an OpenShift. And that's what we kind of do with our components. So I can say, well, I want to use the OpenShift cartridge. You can go, hey, I want to use this Bitbucket project as an example, this Sonar Queue project, this Jenkins project, and I want to deploy to production. And I want this to deploy into production. And what that's done is it's taken that cartridge, configured it, and loaded it, and it will load it for you. Cool. Thanks, Mike.
Awesome. So one of the key things is that, go through again. There we go, perfect. One of the key things was with that is that we still really rely on Jenkins as a base. This kind of portal is really just to take away from our kind of request model and to really automate the goodness in Jenkins and still take that kind of cartridge mechanism and still be able to kind of play with it as a whole. So I mentioned that was on our internal instance at the minute. So we are open sourcing it, and I'll be really, if anyone is interested, please reach out to me because it's we're really trying to gauge interest from this product as a whole. We want to open source it. It's always been our goal. We've just not been able to get there quite yet. A lot of lot of fences to jump. So I kind of wanted to talk about where we're going next with Jenkins in ADOP, just to finish it off. So we have this internal instance. I'll start on the left-hand side. Is we're taking our learning from our cloud-based Jenkins and also kind of pushing it out to the open source. There's so many great things that come with the Enterprise Edition, things like one-shot slaves, things that we can really utilize on both of our platforms as a whole. We want to make more use out of the cloud-native stuff as well. So as I mentioned, it's just another, the same example again, really. But if we wanted to connect to like a ECS cluster to kind of utilize our slaves that we use on the Jenkins, we're kind of heading towards that approach too. ADOP Jenkins libraries for Jenkins files as well. So similar kind of approach from the previous talk. We want to get to the fact that we have not only these cartridges, but these cartridges with a unified set of libraries that people can go and discover and reuse. And more Jenkins and Portal greatness. So really, our ultimate aim for the portal is to get these one-click things that generate all these pipelines in Jenkins, deploys your environment, deploys your infrastructure and everything. So really, Jenkins is still the core for all of our cartridges. We've just got this front end on top of it, in that sense.